West Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't agree with that.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and Bill Show on News Talk 710 KNUS.
Ten a.m. in the Mile High City on this Thursday, June 19th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Saw this headline yesterday in Channel 7. Minister from Highlands Ranch sentenced after he's found guilty of sexually assaulting his daughter. Oh, jeez. My goodness. Richard Mearskin, sentenced to 16 years to life in prison for the crimes he committed here. Hadn't heard much about this case, but wanted to talk with George Brockler, who prosecuted the case, about what happened here, how they rescued the girl from the dad, and just get the details on the sentencing and what's going to happen next. So George Brockler is going to join us here in just a second.
This one was a hard one for me. This was one where I saw the headline and went, yeah, I can't do this one right now. I had to put this aside and get ready for it because it just seemed so diabolical. I'm like, I'm not ready for this one. And that rarely happens. And this was one that I'm like, I have to make sure that I'm emotionally ready for this, that I just don't spin out of control and just want to pillory the guy right now and say, why can't we have, the public hangings in the town square kind of a thing?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, when you're a minister,
there are layers of this. Yes.
That pushes you to another level.
That's the thing.
I hate when you so poorly represent the beauty of the church.
Yes.
And you bring about this type of evil. So.
Oh, yes.
Want to get the details on this.
Yeah,
George will be joining us in just a second.
While participating in the evil nature and the things that the congregation is there to, oh, yes. It took a while for me to come back to this one. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to George here in just a second. Now it's time for News and Comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, News and Comment.
Good Thursday morning, 68 and sunny, Juneteenth in Denver. Expecting a high of 95 today. Going to be a great day. The 710 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story, a judge is allowing the federal case against terrorist Mohammed Solomon to move forward. In the meantime, downtown Boulder CEO Bettina Swigger says city leaders are focused on the future of the area after the attack.
If there is such another event, which we dearly hope it does not ever happen again, that we're able to respond quickly and compassionately in order to make downtown continue to feel safe.
Solomon was in court in Denver on Wednesday after being charged with committing a hate crime after the June 1st attack. The preliminary hearing lasted about 2 hours with lawyers arguing over the reason Solomon targeted a group of marchers calling for the release of Israeli hostages being held in Gaza. Magistrate Judge Catherine Starnella ultimately decided there was enough evidence to move forward to trial. Solomon's next appearance in federal court is set for June 27th. Israeli officials are lashing out at Iran after a missile hit a hospital in southern Israel. NBC's Richard Engel has more.
Israel's defense minister called it a war crime, and Prime Minister Netanyahu saying, "We will exact the full price from the tyrants in Tehran." There were no deaths reported, but several injured. Iran said it was aiming for a military site near the hospital.
Israeli police say 20 patients were evacuated from the hospital. Though the extent of the damage is not clear, the Israeli military says Iran launched dozens of ballistic missiles at Israel overnight, including the one that struck the hospital. DJT speaking to the media about Iran and what is next.
Look, they should have made the deal. I had a great deal for them. They should have made that deal. 60 days we talked about it, and in the end, they decided not to do it, and now they wish they did it. And they want to meet, but it's it's a little late to meet, but they want to meet, and they want to come to the White House. They'll even come to the White House. So we'll see. I may do that, but it's a shame it could have been done the easy way.
We'll see if they come to the White House. That will be fascinating. Several of the nation's biggest cities are suing the Trump administration for withholding federal counterterrorism funding. Seattle, Chicago, Boston, and the city and county of Denver, and the city and county of San Francisco. What a shocker. Jointly filing the lawsuit Monday.
Hold on. I thought that they didn't want local law enforcement working with the federal
You know what?
agents.
That's weird.
Huh.
I thought that's what they said also.
Yeah, right?
How does
They're
that
working
work?
with the feds.
Right.
And
Wait a
now,
minute.
but now they want
I'm
the money
confused.
to work with the feds.
I'm really confused now. These guys. Oh, man. The lawsuit accuses the Trump administration of improperly pausing the securing of cities programs. Cities program. The program created by Congress provides the nation's largest cities with training and equipment to prevent and respond to terrorist attacks and nuclear attacks. Jeff is correct. Wow, it's just amazing
So
how
they're
that
ready
works.
to take the money. They're ready to take the federal money to prepare
God.
local law enforcement to deal with a nuclear attack.
Yes.
They won't take any money to actually have local law enforcement work with 40,000 or so illegal immigrants that showed up in our city.
This is just I don't know how this sanctuary cities how is that legal? Sanctuary states it isn't. It's
It's stupid.
Garbage.
And they tie themselves in knots, like what Jared Polis was like. We can share some data, but we can't share some data because it might violate a law I signed. And
oh man, they're looking out for you. The National Weather Service in Pueblo confirms an EF1 tornado swept through Teller County Tuesday. The agency says the tornado reached wind speeds as high as 106 miles per hour and touched down 2 miles northeast of Divide. It's the 7th tornado to touch down in the county. And once again, our great caller, Dwayne, he lives there.
106-mile-an-hour winds, and Blake will back this up. Somebody thought I was talking for more than 5 minutes. They thought I was the big sound and all the big noise up there. But yeah, there's about a dozen routes. If you're coming up and you're going out towards Cripple Creek, there's a little Divide Market, and then you make a right turn, and you come out towards my compound, or you go up. On that road, 512, you can sit there and see a few trees knocked over and a little bit of branches. A couple of the power lines are bent over really nicely, so I assume sometime today we'll probably lose power.
Oh, man. Love having Dwayne on the show. That's awesome. Still beautiful up there despite the tornado blowing through. The Thunder, they have a chance to win their first NBA crown in Game 6 tonight against the Pacers in Indianapolis. Big game, Game 6, as the Oklahoma City fans await at home. It'll be a packed crowd in the arena there tonight as they watch it on the Jumbotron. 64 in Broomfield, 66 in Littleton, 68 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue.
But like you asked one woman, like, where does your joy come from? I don't know if I've ever seen you ask someone you identify as Antifa, where does your joy come from?
Yeah, well, I'd push back and say there's not a lot of joy there.
Classic. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
The heat is on. Denver in the Front Range will have some of the hottest temperatures of the year so far, starting today and lasting through the weekend. Low to mid-90s and sunny, mid-60s tonight, hot, 90s to near 100 for Friday, mid to upper 90s Saturday, low to mid-90s Sunday, cooling off, just 70s and low 80s by Monday. Dry until Sunday night and Monday when thunderstorms return. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free, no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Well, everybody's talking about him. 710 KNUS, Channel 9.
Yeah, guys with sport coats.
Guys with
better
sport
hair.
coats.
Such good hair. I'm jealous.
What did George Brockler say 5 years ago?
No, what did he do?
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, my God. What did he have for lunch 5 years ago?
Yeah. You talked to a guy?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Well.
Oh, jeez. Guy that he knows? Oh, my God. 5 years ago.
We're not going to get too much into Kyle Clark unless he wants to talk about it. But I did see this story. I want to talk about the prosecution of this guy because you really want to get under my skin, be a minister, abuse kids. Bro.
Oh, yeah. And for me,
I'm not hiding this stuff. I'm going to talk all about this stuff. This is terrible.
This is horrible. Yeah. You want to talk to me about going back into Marcellus Wallace and Pulp Fiction and getting medieval on your ass? Talk about abusing kids. Yeah. We can go there.
As a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ. So, saw this headline, Channel 7 yesterday. Minister from Highlands Ranch sentenced after he's found guilty of sexually assaulting his daughter. Highlands Ranch man, minister of a church in Denver, sentenced to prison after he's found guilty of sexually assaulting his underage daughter. Richard Merskin, sentenced 16 years to life in prison for the crimes. Prior to his arrest, Merskin was the minister of the River Church, located off of West Hampton Avenue in South Denver. The case started July 6, 2023, when deputies with the sheriff's office responded to a report of sexual assault. Merskin was arrested a few hours later. In late February of 2025, a jury found Merskin guilty of 2 counts of sexual assault of a child under the age of 15 by a person in a position of trust. I wanted to just get the background on what happened here. Joining us, the District Attorney for Judicial District 23, George Brockler. Good morning, George.
Yeah, good morning.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I thought for just a moment we were going to talk about an interview I conducted back in the late 90s or something, but it turns out that this is much more relevant.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And in fact, after this part of the interview, though, we're going to talk about that mullet you had in high school, because evidently, since we're going back in the past.
I'm re-grilling it.
Good.
This case, by the way, has so many aspects to it that are worthy of at least mention. And first, I'd say this. We have such a tremendous team of hardcore prosecutors on these crimes that involve the most vulnerable. Danielle Jaramillo is my chief deputy in charge of the Special Victims Unit, and she crushed it in trial on this case. A couple things that people ought to know about this. This was a guy whose family moved out from Florida a couple years before this happened. He sets up this ministry, starts this church, and then he's doing these things to his, at the time, daughter between the ages of about 11 and 13. And what people ought to know about the law is it's not the fact that he was in the position of trust that promised him prison. Because under Colorado law, if you sexually assault your own child just the one time, or they prove just the one time, you're still probation eligible. What got this guy hooked for mandatory prison was that it was a pattern, which means he had to have done it more than one time. That's the only provision in the law when it comes to sexually assaulting children that requires prison. This was something that Brandy Bradley and Regina, I can't remember her last name, English, I think, tried to get changed in the legislature, but of course the Dems were like, prison's bad, and didn't do it. But this case had some moments in it, man. You guys will appreciate this because you have kids. At one point, this guy tells the police in response to things that his daughter finally outcried about, and she was so courageous and, so brave on the stand these couple of years later to testify against her own father in a way that was compelling for the jury. She tells them, hey, Dad puts me on his lap, and he becomes aroused as a precursor to some things. He then, when they confront him with this, he tells them, yeah, well, I'm a guy. That happens to every guy. So Danielle, who's got 2 girls, by the way, and is married to a police officer and all this, she starts going around the office asking every dad of daughters, saying, hey, this guy's saying this. Does that sound true at all? And every single guy was like, what the no? Ever? Never? That's crazy talk? And so you had this kind of a mindset going on with this guy as we go into trial. Something else that was kind of funny that happened. He and his wife's years before, trying to save the marriage while it's going on. This guy turns out to be pretty verbally abusive and demeaning in the marriage. And so they would go to counseling and therapy, and he would deny every single thing the wife said. So she started recording him surreptitiously, saying these horrible things to her and the rest of the family. And those things show up in court. Those things show up in our case. They're discovered, which means the defense has them, right? Like, they have them. The guy knows they exist. He takes the witness stand to testify, which he didn't have to do, but, when you're accused of sexually assaulting your daughter, you feel like, if I'm a defense attorney, I'm like, jury's got to hear you say, that wasn't me, man. So he gets up on the stand, denies, I never said these things to my family. I was a good guy. I never said these things. And so then Danielle, my prosecutor, would just simply ask him a question, he'd deny it, and then later she'd play the recordings of him saying the exact thing, like it as it's happening in the house. It was, if it wasn't such a serious, horrible crime, you'd laugh, like, what the heck is going on?
That's George Brockler. We're talking about the prosecution of a Highlands Ranch man and minister of a church in Denver who was sentenced to prison after he was found guilty of sexually assaulting his underage daughter. And George, without getting too graphic, but I'm guessing that the assault went further than just her sitting on his lap, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Gosh, Lee. No effort to plead this out. I mean, this is what strikes me is if you're a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ, there's plenty of scripture about telling the truth. There's plenty of scripture about settling even before you get to court, and to try to bring peace. Was his stance just, this never happened, they're making it up, my daughter's lying, this type of stuff? Was that their counter argument?
Yeah, what happens in all cases, this one included, is any approach to this by the defense usually encompasses one or both of 2 things, and that is, 1, we don't want to go to prison. We don't want any incarceration for this, and 2, we want to plead to something that doesn't require us to admit the sex part, because the sex part comes with it things like, in certain cases, lifetime registration as a sex offender, sex-offender-specific treatment, all that other stuff. So that's how negotiations tend to go with these. And in this particular case, this was a guy who, whether it was for his own pride or ego or whatever, could not bring himself to take responsibility at a level that made sense. And so we went to trial. And these are not slam dunk cases, because as you can imagine, the evidence is the victim. Nobody's videotaping this. Nobody, you know what I mean? There's no other witness to this. That doesn't take place in a public setting or where mom is watching. So really what this comes down to is the credibility of the daughter, who was so courageous, and then this guy saying and doing things afterwards that just screamed, I am guilty, I am guilty. And that's the way the jury found it. One other thing to note, by the way, he was convicted of 2 separate acts. Those acts could have been combined by the judge to make a 32-year mandatory minimum sentence up to potentially life. And that's what we asked for. The judge chose to run them concurrently. So that means he's getting, and the argument of my prosecutor, which is brilliant, is he shouldn't get a freebie. There's no freebie. You do 2 acts, you get 2 sentences. And so he ended up getting 16 years on both to run at the same time. He would likely be, and get this, for even crimes like this, he's still going to get a 30% discount off of the time for, I think, good time. I don't think he gets earned time, but I think he gets good time automatically off the top. So he would likely, at the earliest, be parole eligible somewhere around 11-ish years.
And back out in our communities. That's George Brockler, District Attorney for Judicial District 23. George, I want to ask you about the initial report. Darren Weekly was praising Stephanie Dorrell, part of the Special Victims Unit, for bringing justice to this guy. The initial report comes to whom? A teacher? To law enforcement? Was it the daughter? Was it the mother? And then give us some insight to how a Special Victims Unit kicks in here.
I cannot remember the detail of how this one got to the sheriff's office, whether it was a mandatory reporter or whether it was finally somebody that knows the daughter who isn't a mandatory reporter coming forward. I just can't remember. But I can tell you, once it gets to these specialized units that Stephanie's in at DCSO and some of the other agencies that are large enough to have that specialization, then these experts kick in, and they know that these are hard cases and that some of the challenge is how do we put together evidence to, one, to prove the credibility of this person or disprove it in cases where maybe it's not legitimate. But that is so rare. And I know everybody thinks, hey, there's all these false accusations out there, maybe on social media, but in reality, we just don't see it. In fact, I can't recall it, but maybe one time in 30 years of doing this. And so then their goal is to go out there, meet with the victim, get as much information as they can, and depending upon the age of the victim, they would take them to a place that specializes in the forensic interview of children, a special way to talk to them to get them to open up and reveal these horrible things that they're hanging on to. At 11 to 13, you're old enough to know, and you probably even know some of the terminology. Younger than that, their kids sometimes don't appreciate something bad that's happening to them, but even when they do, they don't know the words to associate with it. They don't, they can describe the act and the feeling and how dad is doing things, but they don't know what it means. They don't know these things, but they know that there's something wrong. So these things will ferret it out. And then these detectives, man, they get really creative. And now, although it wasn't in this particular case, they will do certain kinds of phone calls with the bad guy. Or bad girl in this case, because we have some female teachers that are out there sleeping with their students. And we'll do a phone call. And it'll be a phone call that is completely recorded from the victim to the person. And it'll be in some other context where they will try to get them to open up about, hey, I'm so sorry for what happened. I don't know, or it wasn't that bad, or you seemed into it, that kind of stuff. And then they start to build the rest of the case around this person, proving that they were where they said they were, proving if they need to, distinguishing characteristics, marks on the body, things like that, and then they start to build out that way. But these folks, you do not want these folks to be focused on you if you're into this stuff, because they will find you and they will figure out a way to get the evidence to prove you guilty.
That's George Brockler, District Attorney for Judicial District 23, joining Jeff and Bill, talking about a really, really horrible case where it was a pastor that's been convicted for abusing his daughter. It was one that when I saw the headline, I had to put it aside and had to come back to later because I just wasn't ready for it. Now, you talked about the idea of the concurrent sentences. And what I want you to kind of maybe address is how difficult it is at times to get criminals sentenced to those back-to-back sentences as far as why the judge pushes them as concurrent sentences and the difficulty there. Because, I would say for the average listener of the Jeff and Bill show, this was abuse that took place over years. This was abuse that took place in different series of actions. The idea, and it's an inelegant analogy, but going back to the same store to rob it over and over again. Each one of those acts is a separate crime. Yet asking someone to serve their sentence or their punishment together with all the crimes as one seems illogical. And what I mean by that is a parent, if you're going to, again, bad analogy, but if you're going to ground your kid for doing something that broke the rules of the household, you don't say, I'm grounding you, 10 days for this and 10 days for that and 10 days for that, but we're going to have you serve them all together. So it's all 10 days. No, that's 30 days. That's an entire month Talk to us about the difficulty and the challenges you face walking into the courtroom and convincing these judges to not make sentences like this concurrent.
Yeah, it's tough, and you've highlighted some important aspects of this. For some judges, their thoughts are more big picture, like what's my total time that I'm looking at? What's the minimum amount of time I'm trying to achieve? And we disagree on that all the time with judges. Judges, and of course all the judges that are in the 23rd Judicial District who may be listening to this as either a podcast or live know that they're the most attractive, smartest people I've ever met. But sometimes judges bring to these cases their own personal sense of what the community values this case at. And honestly, I think sometimes we just disagree. We think they get it wrong, and I'm sure they think we're wrong. One thing they miss, though, many times is the optics. And so one of the things that could have been accomplished here is a 16 plus 16 sentence for 32. Or if the judge was set on 16, could have said, I'm going to give you the minimum on each, and it was an 8 to 24-year sentence. I'm going to give you 8 each, but stack them. Sometimes when you have multiple victims, judges are more attuned to the idea that each victim deserves a sentence for what happened to them, and they will be more inclined to want to stack those charges where the law doesn't mandate it. But it's challenging, man, and I know that every year the judges are told this is what it costs to warehouse a bad guy, and this is how full our prisons are, and these are all these alternatives. They are bludgeoned by state judicial and the other powers that be, including the legislature, on the idea that prison is the last and worst potential option for any case. I disagree. I think in many times like this, it is the first and only option to secure any kind of justice. So they have a lot of pressures against them that encourage them to try to run things concurrently as opposed to consecutively.
That's George Brockler, District Attorney for Judicial District 23, upon the sentencing of a minister from Highland Ranch after he's found guilty of sexually assaulting a daughter. I think it's good to wrap this all up with a reminder out there, and we talk about it in our family too, that everybody's got to watch out for everybody. You can't just blanket trust the church. I'll tell you this, as somebody who's an ordained minister, you can't just blanket trust the church. You got to tell the kids that your youth pastor should never be doing anything inappropriate. Priest should never be doing anything inappropriate. Stay on top of this. Stay vigilant. And George, I just got to tell you and your team, thank you guys for the justice you got here and putting this guy away and keeping our community safer from predators like this. Well done, sir.
Yes, thank you so much.
I appreciate you guys letting me come on to talk about this, and I want the message to be, at least for our jurisdiction, if you are in one of those positions of trust and you abuse that trust, your expectation should be incarceration, and not a little bit, but we're going to try to take away as much of your freedom as possible. And the problem is now, as you guys know, we see it everywhere. It's not just ministers. I mean, Billy's in my church was guilty of this for decades, covering this stuff up. It's teachers. You guys cover this stuff too. It's teachers. Jeffco, Douglas, everywhere. It's like, what the hell is going on? I don't know the answer, but I do know what's going to happen when we get them in court.
That's some justice there. All right, so now to pivot. 15 years ago, you bumped into somebody at a Starbucks.
Yeah.
And,
yes.
Oh, George, always on everybody's mind, including a certain sports.
We heard a rumor online that at one point you attended a New Kids on the Block concert, and so we're kind of concerned about
that. Is a categorical denial. There's no chance that happened. And Jeff, thanks for throwing out a tweet on that thing too, to your massive followership. It felt like we need a story that involves Brockler that can't be positive, and they just couldn't come up with one until now. And so they dusted off some recording from 5 years ago when I was where you are right now, sitting in your seat right now. And I'm like, what? I mean, I recorded the whole phone call, and Kyle knows he recorded the whole one, too, and we've debated whether to put it up. I'm not sure to drive attention to it, but it was ridiculous, man. It's like, do you feel like you should apologize? I'm like, what? No?
For what?
I mean, like, that's just ridiculous. Are you crazy?
And everybody can see what this is really all about from 100 miles away. You have a very talented Republican, and Channel 9 is not going to allow that to go unchallenged. So, this is all about sandbagging George's potential and future political career.
It was very, very strange because if you peeled back the onion on other individuals that were involved in the story, there are more salacious stories than this dude once talked to this guy on the phone. There are some other things involving other people in that story that are got much more sizzle behind them. But Kyle ignored that because he had to take the easy layup.
Kyle's getting ready for Phil Weiser's run in Judicial District 23.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Once again, if that happened and the bad things happen at the polls, I will have to move off the planet. So, Elon, if you're listening, you've got to get Mars up and running, because if that happens, I can't be here anymore.
Always great to talk to you, my friend. George Brockler, thank you for joining the show.
Man.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
All right, let's talk alarm detection systems. If you're in Judicial District 23, they get the bad guys, but anywhere else in Colorado, they kind of let them go. That's why if you own a business in Colorado, you need to have quality, top-notch alarm protection. That comes from Alarm Detection Systems, the highest level of service and expertise. Plus, they combine all of the needs of an alarm system into one source for your cameras, key card access, fire and intrusion systems. Here's what they're offering right now: expert alarm installation and testing by highly trained technicians, 24/7 professional monitoring, same day or next day service upon request, dedicated teams for cameras, access control, and fire alarms, and over 300 security professionals working for you. Choosing ADS means your business stays protected and will be ready to open tomorrow. They combine human monitoring with latest AI camera technology to prevent crime in real time. They're trusted by small and large businesses, including many Colorado schools. Their security experts will review your system for free. All you got to do, visit adsalarm.com to schedule your free appointment today. adsalarm.com. Alarm Detection Systems, the first choice of Front Range and Colorado businesses. adsalarm.com. We'll continue with your phone calls and texts. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Just wrapping up a conversation with George Brockler about this minister in Highlands Ranch that has been prosecuted for assaulting his own daughter.
Jeez.
Terrible stuff.
That was spooky when George mentioned something that, of course, I'm not certain if a lot of the audience knew, and I certainly did. But again, we could fill tomes and tomes of information that I don't understand or know. But the fact that if you just abuse your child once, that's probation. Meh? That shocked me a little bit, that the reason this pastor really is going to be spending at least a decade, and we all hope more based on parole possibilities, behind bars, is because he did this multiple times. But if it was just once, wow, it's just a probation thing. That's a little shocking, because I'm not certain.
And what drives me crazy about that is it's not like something we haven't tried to change.
Yeah, exactly. And the idea
in a bipartisan way, too.
Yeah, the thing for me is that there are certain crimes I can see probation eligible, but this one is such a personal violation of another individual. It really gets me, and it's that idea of what that individual is going to have to deal with for the rest of their life, potentially based on this, that these are ripple effects that are going to impact their relationships, their growth, their thought processes for decades. And probation, I understand that the criminal made one singular act, but when that one singular act can create such disruption in another person's life, I disagree that probation is acceptable. It is such an impactful decision to abuse another individual even once that seems to me to say you can forfeit your freedom for a limited amount of time, but you absolutely have to because of the impact you had on that other individual. Had to. And again, it does. You talk about this a lot, Jeff. Some of the craziness that happens in our state legislature, and the fact that is probation eligible is crazy. Absolutely crazy.
And Brandy Bradley and Representative English were on the show to talk about their efforts to address that and why it was squashed by the Democrats. But speaking of people getting out,
yes,
Jared Polis using his time at a psychedelics conference.
Wait, what?
Yep. Announces mass pardons for psilocybin possession.
Oh, okay. I did say that.
Yes.
Wow.
Pardons apply only to state-level convictions, but the governor urged municipal governments to follow suit. Bill.
Weird. Yeah. Yeah, what do you think? Yeah, tell me.
Help me understand
yes.
how in our state, with all the drug problems we have going on,
yeah,
homelessness, the crime, the cost of living, all the challenges that the state is going through.
Yeah.
Jared Polis is like, today, I'm going to go down to the Denver Psychedelics Conference and pardon people who were in possession of psychedelic mushrooms.
Yeah. It's again... That's a
maybe
weird one.
If you want to make the defense that this is criminal justice reform and all this stuff, and we're imprisoning people. I don't think there's people in prison for the possession of psychedelic mushrooms.
And if you are,
maybe the distribution.
Yeah.
But really, this is where I go with Jared Polis, and I'm like, he's libertarian, and I put those in air quotes.
Yes.
Libertarian only as it relates to abortion, drug use, and doctor-assisted suicide. Anything else, he's the furthest thing from a libertarian.
Yeah, for me, it's a weird one because again, the idea of blanket pardons, etc., and taking away. I understand expunging some individuals because if let's just say that for whatever reason you're going to a concert at Red Rocks and you happen to get searched or popped for whatever reason, and you've got some in your pocket, okay, I can see that type of an idea being forgiven. But if it's the idea of the distribution, that you were involved in the selling and distribution of it before this became legal, yeah, I do think that probably should be something that should follow you around. I understand that the drug is legal now, but it wasn't back then. I have a different level of how I'm going to hold you responsible. In this case, based on your personal choice to ingest it or take that hallucinogenic versus helping facilitate more people get it through criminal activity. There's a little bit of a line there that I'm uncomfortable with. And so I can see holding people responsible for the criminal activity because it was a crime at that time. The possession for me is a little more amorphous because there is a part of it that, what you do in the privacy or sometimes with several thousand people at Red Rocks might be your own business. So that's a little difficult. But yeah,
I mean, the
doing
article,
this in
the article doesn't even list how many people have been pardoned because there can't be that many.
Oh, no.
And is it like a Pope's blessing?
I think so.
I hereby mass pardon all of you.
You have to do it in Latin, technically. The thing is, the weird part is, did he have to do it at the psychedelic conference?
Gosh.
But the other part is this. Okay, you and I got to admit this, and we got to share this with the audience. Okay, listen to the Jeff and Bill show. There at that psychedelic conference, there were at least 3 or 4 people that walked by and saw Governor Polis and went, whoa, these things are kicking in a little bit early. I think I just saw the governor down here. Oh my God, I gotta go sit down. Oh boy, someone check my blood pressure here.
So this is a 4,000 person conference held here in Colorado. Scientists, research, entrepreneurs, drug dealers,
but you
and
ask the
advocates.
people there, they're hallucinating so much they think there's 30,000 people. Way more people.
Okay.
Yeah, psychedelic conference.
Here are the questions I have. Because, look, I think the average Coloradan looks at our drug policy with regards to marijuana possession or psychedelic possession. It's like, look, using the force of police to go after you because you got a little joint in your pocket is not something that I'm necessarily all that about. But
the level of criminality.
With regards to commercialization, which is where this all goes. Okay? You have more pot shops in Denver than you have Starbucks and McDonald's combined. Is that good for our state? Do you appreciate the marijuana storefronts that are all over the place? And now are you going, you know what we need to add to this? Psychedelic mushroom storefronts.
Yeah. And this is the thing for individuals out there that are listening to the show that are more in tune with the idea of legalizing drugs and the fact of the access to it. I firmly believe that Jeff's best argument against it is the commercialization. And think about what he's saying here. Think about it, because once we commercialize it, you have to put the profit motive behind it. And once you put the profit motive behind it, that means any particular business is trying to grow their customer base and cultivate regular customers. That's what they're looking for. And if you're looking for the potential danger inside of this drug legalization, that's exactly it. Because in order for this to remain profitable, you have to find more people to take the drugs and do it more often to grow the profits. Because I can't imagine anybody in the state of Colorado would say someone out there needs to open a business with the expressed interest of not making any money. That's a charity. That's different. You can go start a charity, but I don't know anybody that's ever started a business that said the one thing I hope I don't do is make any money doing this. And that's your argument, my friend.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Well, so here's my question to our listeners. Feel free to give us a call, 303-696-1971. This Psychedelic Science Conference is at the Colorado Convention Center now through Friday. Are we ready as a state? Do you look at the state of Colorado and go, yes, marijuana was wonderful. I'm so glad we decriminalized and commercialized that drug and we got pot shops everywhere. Let's add psychedelic mushrooms to it now. Or was it a disaster what we did with pot, and you don't like seeing the governor now take another step forward with another drug and adding more drugs to our streets out here? Give me a call. We'd love to hear from you. 303-696-1971.
Other question I have is, if you are in favor of the psychedelic mushrooms, is there a next drug? Is there something else on your list? Again, I hate the slippery slope argument, so I'm not going to make it. But I'm curious if you're willing to decriminalize or make other things legal. Or is this your line? It's always fair. Everybody draws their own line somewhere.
Ooh,
I'm
that's
curious,
a good question.
Where's your line?
That is a good question. We'd love to hear from you. 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Campos Law Text line at 720-819-5115. All right. Discover incredible savings at the Mountain High Appliance Clearance Center in Denver. My friends at the Mountain High Appliance have a clearance center offering huge selections of ranges, refrigerators, washers, and dryers, and more. Save up to 60% on open box, scratch, and dent display models and overstocked appliances from Bosch, Thermador, KitchenAid, and many more. 60% savings just because the box was opened. You got to go check out the clearance center. When you're looking for great deals on appliances, think Mountain High Appliance Clearance Center for the best prices and selection. Here's their address: 601 East 64th Avenue in Denver. 601 East 64th Avenue in Denver. We'll continue with the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Jared Polis announces mass pardons for psilocybin possession. That's psychedelic mushroom possession at Denver's Psychedelics Conference. At this point, should we just decriminalize all the drugs? Just turn it up. Addict as many people as you want. Well, they tried that in Oregon. It was a mass disaster.
They're going the other way now.
Yeah, they're going the other way.
Yeah.
Even California is going the other way now. Cities like Oakland are saying, look, we'll give you 3 strikes to try to get help. But if you're in a tent doing drugs and we cite you 3 times, now you're going to be incarcerated because we're tired of the trash and the problems and the lack of public safety that comes with just open use drugs in our communities. Not going to happen anymore.
Yeah,
Let's go to the phone.
Yeah, we'll go to the phone and just say I had a really good example from someone a couple of years ago that had a nice filter for talking about whether or not we should legalize drugs and what you want to legalize. Their question was, would you make it available in the vending machine? And I think that's just a great way to think about it. Would you make it available in the vending machine? If so...
And if you do that, then you what are we going to do with all the consequences? Are you just going to shut off all of the social services, too? So now you're going to be dying in the streets.
Exactly.
Let's go to Kevin, Denver. Good morning, Kevin. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Yeah, good morning.
Yeah, appreciate it. I guess I'm just expressing my own opinion, but I marked the beginning of the decline of the once great city of Denver from the time that I mistakenly voted to legalize marijuana. So my opinion is get rid of all of it. All of it. Make it illegal again and run them out of town.
Now, Kevin, got a question for you on that. Based on the, and where I'm going with this, excuse me, is the something in my throat there. The idea of all of it. I'm wondering how you define all, and my question specifically focuses on: do you include either tobacco or alcohol in all? Should they be banned as well? What's your thought about that?
Well, it's sort of like the same problem with firearms. You know, historically, we've always been able to protect ourselves with the gun rights amendment. I don't think any of the pioneers who came across the Great Plains of Kansas and Nebraska to come to Colorado carried psilocybin and wild mushrooms. So,
but they did encounter marijuana, from what we have culturally. So that would have been around and was used.
Well, marijuana on a commercial basis, I think, is a real problem. But that's my opinion.
Yeah, could we say the same thing about alcohol?
Alcohol has been with mankind since mankind was mankind.
Yeah, so is marijuana, though. That's to be fair.
Well, theoretically, you're correct, and I understand that. It's just that alcohol use can be corrected. Marijuana use seems to, and I think you were talking about how it's important if it's to be made profitable. It's kind of like the automobile industry. You got to sell more and more of them to really be at a
Have you seen how much money Budweiser makes?
Yeah, and to that point, look at the amount of problems that come with the commercialization of alcohol. And now we're looking at our culture and are like, you know what? Let's add to it.
Yeah.
Let's add more, because there's 5 times more people dying of tobacco than fentanyl. One of them's legal, one of them's not.
But Kevin makes a great point. He makes a great point about where we're drawing that line. I appreciate the call, Kevin.
All right, we've got Diane with Save the Storks up next. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is KNUS.